And you can also call us. Phone number is 970-999-5176. We have a number of things that we're going to be talking to. You can also call us about this week. Phone number is 970-999-5176. We're going to be talking to. I know. It's your team, Dan and Alex, Team Taboo. And stuff. Anyway, so what we're going to talk about today is going to be gender equality. Taboo. This is something that I know Alex has a lot to say on because she's the one who suggested. So what we're going to talk about abortion. Are supposed to be this pure innocent creature that doesn't do those things and stuff like that. It's not like, it's not like I'm gonna like fire somebody. Are supposed to be face. Well, this pure innocent creature that doesn't do those things and stuff like that. It's not like, you know, it's not like I'm gonna like
For
fire
Taboo.
someone they're supposed to be faced. I am your host, Xanadu, and of course with me, as always, is my cohort, Alex. Stuff like that. It's not like,
Hey guys, glad you're here.
We
For
are
Taboo.
very supposed to be. Hey,
I am your host,
have anything that you want to
Xanadu,
do, and of course
definitely
slide it into the chat rooms because we have plenty of them open on
Hey guys,
YouTube,
glad you're here.
Twitch, Smashcast,
Taboo.
Facebook Live, Mixer,
I am your host,
as well as
Xanadu,
and of course definitely slide it into
Skype
rooms because we have plenty of them open. The Arrow Radio on
Hey guys,
YouTube,
glad you're
and
Taboo.
Facebook Live,
Hey, I am your host,
as well as
Xanadu,
you can also call us. Phone number is 970-999-5176. We have a number of things that we're going to be talking to, as well as you can also call us. Phone number is 970-999-5176. We have a number of things that we're going to be talking to, Taboo, as well as you can also call us. Anyway, so what we're going to talk about today is going to be gender inequality. We have a number of things that we're going to be talking to Taboo, as well as abortion. It's been all over the news. So what we're going to talk about today is gender inequality. We have President Trump, Mr. Trumplet. And then we're also going to be talking about fear and how it controls you. Kind of touched on this last episode, President Trump, and we're going to expand a little bit on that. And we're also going to be talking about fear, about the law of one, of course. Only this time, instead of reading passages, President Trump, and we're going to expand a little bit. We're going to be talking about what it is and why should you have one, of course. And then, this time, we're going to talk about human suspension into the Trump, and we're going to expand inevitable. We're going to be talking about what it is, and we're also going to talk why should what we have to do. And then, this time, we're going to do human suspension into the Trump. So, without further inevitable, we're going to be talking about what it is, and we're also Alex, what are gender what we have to do? And then, this time, we're going to do
In my mind, at any rate, it's a double standard that the entirety of this world seems to have. In other countries, I know it's a hell of a lot worse than it is here in the U.S. In my mind, at any rate, it's a double standard. Middle Eastern women can't even the entirety of this eyes when it comes to have. In other countries, I know it's a infinite amounts of single mothers that are trying to make it on their own as well, and it just kind of like makes my gears grind and tick and just drives me absolutely nuts. Infinite amounts of single mothers that are trying to make it on their own as well.
Let me ask you, because
and it just
obviously
kind
you're
of like
a woman and I am a
makes
guy.
my gears
What
grind
are
and
the
tick and
gender
just drives me
inequalities that
absolutely
you
nuts.
yourself
Infinite
have
amounts of,
been
single mothers
exposed?
that
With
are
that
trying to make it
being
on their own
said,
as well.
let me ask you,
Some of the
because
lesser
obviously
ones,
you're
I would
a woman
say,
and I am a
probably.
What are
Again,
the
it
gender
just drives me
inequalities that
absolutely
you
nuts.
yourself
Probably those that have been more exposed.
With
Say I
that
have
being
white privilege.
said, let me ask you,
Some of the
because
lesser
obviously
ones,
you're
I would
a woman
say,
and I am a
probably.
What are
Again,
the
it
gender
just drives me
inequalities that
absolutely
you
nuts.
yourself
Probably those that have been more exposed.
With
Say I
that
have white
being
privilege.
said, let me ask you,
Some of the
because
lesser
obviously
ones,
you're
I would
a woman
say,
and I am a
probably.
What are
Again,
the
it
gender
just drives me
inequalities that
absolutely
you
nuts. Probably
yourself
those that have been more exposed.
With
Say I
that
have white
being
privilege.
said,
Yeah, that was a good one.
ones,
I would say, probably.
What are
Again,
the
it
gender
just drives me
inequalities that
absolutely
you
nuts.
yourself
Probably those that have been more exposed.
With
Say I
that
have white
being
privilege.
said,
Yeah, that was a good one. I would say, probably.
What are
Again,
the
it
gender
just drives me
inequalities that
absolutely
you
nuts. Probably
yourself
those that have been more exposed.
With
Say I
that
have white
being
privilege.
said,
Yeah, that was a good one. I would say, probably.
What are
Again,
the
it
gender
just drives me
inequalities that
absolutely
you
nuts.
yourself
Probably those that have been more exposed.
With
Say I
that
have white
being
privilege.
said,
Yeah, that was a good one. I would say, probably.
What what are
Again,
the
it
gender
just drives me
inequalities that
absolutely
you
nuts. Probably
yourself
those that have been more
been
exposed
with
say
that
I have white
being
privilege.
said.
Yeah, that was
Well, not
rude.
necessarily profane, but exaggerated. You know what I mean?
But again, like I said, those were minor ones. The ones, and this is going to go into the next topic, which, like you said in the beginning, kind of merges with this as well. Women being told what they can and can't do with their bodies by men is just nuts.
Well, yeah, and we're going to touch on that in the abortion segment, but I think that goes. I think when I think gender inequalities, what I'm thinking is twofold, right? If a woman is walking down the street revealing skin, you know, whether in a sexy, slutty, or whatever kind of way you want to tag it, you know, and then guys do the cat calls and stuff like that, all that kind of stupidity. That's, you know, we're talking about old school stuff, right? I mean, this still goes on, don't get me wrong. But I think that there's the feminist movement is partially, I don't want to say to blame for this, but for example, I would not have a problem going down. Well, okay, I personally would not go down the street with my shirt off anymore. But if I'm going down the street with my shirt off, I don't see why, you know, especially on a hot day. I mean, you know, we live in Colorado. We have hot days, cold nights, cold days, hot nights, whatever. Having a woman go down the street in the same thing, you know, in shorts and no shirt would not bother me.
That
The double standard, I think, is more what we're talking about here, or what we intended to talk about here. So, I mean, that's kind of a weird example. For example, I don't think, and see, I don't have any of these issues. I don't think. I don't see, you know, like a woman going down the street and then let's say she gets raped. Well, everybody's like, oh my God, she was dressed like a slut, and, you know, slut shaming and all this other stuff. When, you know, God, it's so hard to talk about this. If she were to get raped just because of what she was wearing, that's fucked up to begin with. Rape is fucked up anyway. But then if the same thing were to happen to a really good looking guy, that he gets raped. And I know a lot of women are like, oh, men can't get raped. Yes, they can. It's looked at differently. You know, I'm talking about the difference there between male rape and female rape. And it's always thought that the woman is too demure, whatever that word is, too tiny, too frail, too fragile to rape a guy, when I know in fact it can and does happen. The social stigma of that is that, you know, most guys don't report that kind of activity. They chalk it up to a really bad night and move on. And again, we're going to get into more of that kind of stuff with the abortion topic that's coming up. But
And there was even a museum exhibit that was put out that was basically the outfits of women and girls that were raped, what they were wearing when they were raped. And I'd say 90% of those outfits were no more skims, like exposing, than a t-shirt and jeans. One of them, I think, was a pair of pajamas. One of them was a dress that was almost floor length.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, if you can get, if most of these cases of women getting raped are with them in regular clothing, then I honestly don't see what the lack of clothing would have to do with it. And going out, being in the service industry, going door to door, when somebody answers the door in nothing but their boxers, and I have to deal with that, and I'm like, yeah, okay, not my choice, but okay, it's you.
Well, and I've been part of that too when I used to deliver pizzas and stuff. Pardon me. I can remember very vividly going to a house where the woman had just gotten out of the shower, like literally. It's like you were waiting for your pizza to get delivered and you took a shower. But yeah, she came to the door and a towel on her head and one wrapped around her, and then she takes the pizza and oops, the towel falls off. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, well, have a good night. So I know the things happen to both genders. I mean, it took a very long time for women to be able to vote. It took a very long time for women to be seen as equals in the workplace, and that still doesn't necessarily happen. And I think a lot depends on the positions, because I know people in lower paying positions are basically treated like dirt either side.
Minimum wage.
Yeah. But I think as the businesses look at more, I'm going to use the term qualified or more high-end type positions, that's definitely an issue. I know many women attorneys who don't get paid as much as their men. Me personally, I would rather have a woman attorney because I know how women can fight. And verbally speaking, you can't match. And there is not a guy in the world a female in an argument. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, we have tempers.
You do, but I mean, guys have tempers too. It's just all in the different expressions. The part that bugs me most about the whole gender equality issues is it's creating another rift. A rift not between the sexes, really. It's male.
Hey, this is Leslie Samuel here from
I can say whatever as a man. If a woman were to say it, is it the same thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's another thing. Especially in the workplace, if a guy takes authority, if a guy does what he has to do to be the leader that he needs to be, he is recognized as a good leader, a good boss. But let a woman take authority and all of a sudden she's a bitch. She's aggressive.
See, and I prefer to work for women. I really do. I can totally get in their mindset, and that always works for me. Where guys, it's kind of like they always have alternative motives. Now, this brings up another good point about gender inequality, especially in the workplace, is you have, I'm going to go back to the 50s, right? In the 50s, guys would tap people on the butts. They'd, give shoulder rubs, that kind of thing. And it would be one of those things that wasn't really reported. Pardon me. Nowadays, if a guy is to do that, then, oh my God, there are so many lawsuits, and it seems overly frivolous. And this is part of the whole rape culture that bugs me too, is that if you have sex with somebody the next day or a week later or whatever, it can be claimed as rape. And it doesn't seem like it takes the whole thing into effect. Okay. Like, I'll give an example here. If I go out with somebody and we have some drinks, we come back to my place or her place, it doesn't really matter, and we have sex, and 2 days later she decides that I'm an asshole because I didn't call her back or text her back or something like that. She claims it's rape, I go to jail. It's pretty much a given, right?
Well, and then, of course, there's the cases where it also gets tries to get turned around, especially in the instances that you were mentioning earlier. Say a woman does rape a man and they take it to court or whatever.
They're laughed out of the courtroom.
They're laughed. They'll try to turn it around. It's always getting twisted in one way or another. Yeah.
So, I mean, what can you do about that? There's not a lot. any of us can really do about that except for put a stop to it.
Would be nice.
Yeah, but circumstances are what they are, and until we have somebody like Bran Stark in office that can actually see what went on and say without a doubt, definitely it was a rape or it wasn't, it's kind of hard to prove one way or another. Now, in the cases where it is a rape, the person who is claiming the rape is often treated shittily. They have to relive it over and over again, and there's so many little technicalities and stuff like that. So,
and if their story changes in any way, even the minutest little detail, then all of a sudden they're lying, and it's...
Or they find out, hey, prior to this person was promiscuous, or, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just because I had sex with 200 people last night doesn't mean I wanted to have sex with this person today, And it goes the same way with women. Just because she's had sex with 200 people in a night and then somebody forces themselves on her, it doesn't mean that she wanted it. So,
especially in that business too.
And I mean, you can blame porn for that. You can blame whatever. But ultimately, and this is one of the quotes that I love from this movie, it's called K-Pax, if you haven't seen it. One of the best quotes in that entire movie is, every creature in the universe knows right from wrong. Instinctively, they know right from wrong. So if they do something that's wrong, well, we'll hit a little bit more on that in the fear part of this segment too. But so, I mean, there's tons of inequalities for males and females. I do think that a lot more is felt by women even still today, but I'm starting to see that whole reversal of the situation. We'll see where it goes, but again, I think it's another one of those things that's created by the power elite to help divide us. If we're busy fighting each other over stupid shit like that, then, and I shouldn't say it's stupid shit because I don't want to demean or devalue somebody's experiences by any means. But if it is something like that, then, people need to realize that it's something trying to divide us and not something that's real. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that's also like a whole government type agenda. I honestly think the government is trying to divide the entire country.
Oh, in many ways. And we can get into that in another episode. But let's move on to abortion.
One of the most
heated topics ever, taboo or not. It's a very heated topic. And, okay, so my personal thought, I am pro-choice. I think I've told you that before.
And I am too. I have mixed feelings on it, but I am definitely pro-choice.
And there's certain instances where I believe it should be done. It being abortion. And that's in the case of incest. That's in the case of rape, those kind of things where, it would be very hard to love a child brought into the world through an act of evil. Okay. I'm not saying everybody feels that way. I completely understand everybody's point of view on this subject. But I can say without a doubt, from the moment the cells split, it's a baby. You're not with baby, you have a baby. You're not expecting a baby, you have a baby. Now, that being said, there's a certain point, I want to say it's around 6 or 9 weeks, where the circulatory system has developed, and maybe it's longer than that, but I can't remember right offhand. But at any rate, where the circulatory system has developed, the heart is beating and the brain is developing.
At this point, the baby can feel things.
Exactly. At that point, I don't believe it should be up for adoption. Or, I'm sorry, abortion. It should be up for adoption at that point. I think there should be, late-term abortions are just sick. If you've ever seen a video in how they create and do abortions, which I was going to add to this, but I thought that would be a little bit disgusting. So I took that out. But basically, they reach in with forceps and they tear the baby apart, pull it out piece by piece, make sure they have all the pieces there, and then they vacuum out the uterus. Okay. So that in mind, I don't think late-term abortions, I don't think anything after 6 weeks should be aborted. 6 to 9 weeks tops.
But that's 5 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how long it takes you to find out you're pregnant.
Right. And that's the other thing. So, you know, if you were to find out, I mean, if you know by 6 weeks or 9 weeks, you know, that's it. At 9 weeks, you're looking at a little over 2 months that you haven't had a period. You should be understanding. I might want to take a test or something like that. You know, at that point, you know, I think, yeah, you should have very little time to figure that out, you know. But if you have sex with somebody and they're unprotected and you're unprotected and you even have the slightest idea that you may be pregnant, you know, there's always the Plan B pill that you can take right away, and that takes care of it. But if you wait 2 months, you know, 4 to 5 weeks, I'd say, if you're 4 to 5 weeks late, right? You've had sex and 4 weeks later you realize, hey, I haven't had a period yet. I might want to take a test. You know what I mean? I don't know. This goes back also to the thing where laws about women's bodies should not be made by men, which is why I put this graphic in here. Her body, her choice. Ultimately, yes, it is her body, and yes, it is her choice. You know what I mean? So I am completely pro-choice. I don't think later term abortions should be legal just because, you know, if you had sex and you didn't take care of it within the first 3 to 4 months tops, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, it's kind of your fault at that point.
Yeah.
And I saw a meme, a graphic, whatever you want to call it, about a week ago, and I think I might have brought this up to you then too. It said that birth control pills should be for men because it's easier to unload a gun than to shoot at a bulletproof vest.
This is very true. Yes, and you did share that with me, and I like that a lot. Okay, so I'm going to give you my experience. And I've noticed a lot of women also, if they go in and they say, hey, I want my tubes tied or I want a hysterectomy, the doctors won't do it unless you've already had at least one kid.
That's just
I think that's stupid. Also, you know, for me personally, I didn't want kids. I wanted to have a vasectomy when I was like 18 or probably more likely 16. But, you know, I was told, no, I couldn't have it. I talked to the doctor. No, you can't have it until you've had at least one kid. And that's just stupid. If I know I don't want kids, I don't want an accident out there. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And I'm sure women feel the same way. And I think that it's not just a gender inequality to go back to that topic. It's something that they do, and I don't understand why. So, I mean, I could go into more stuff about how I feel the welfare system should work, but we're not going to go there in this episode either.
And that's another thing too. Like, we have over 7 billion people on this planet.
Yeah, let me not have any more.
For real. Like, why are we insisting on continuing to increase the population at this point?
Well, you know, yeah, I don't know. It makes no sense to me. We're getting into that in a little bit too, but moving on, President Trump.
The thing that divides this country most, or the person that divides this country most at this point.
I don't even know if that's true. I think it's more Democratic stupidity than President Trump. I believe, God, I have something caught in my throat. Hang on. I believe that President Trump is a American. I think he's a patriot. I think he's really looking out for what's best for people. And I think that's why the powers that be hate him so much.
Going back to the control issue.
Yeah.
They can't control him. They can't control what he's doing.
Exactly.
for the American people, and therefore all of a sudden he's the bad guy.
Yep. And it's something that he's going to live through this term and probably his next one if I have anything to say about it as well. That being said, as a person, I think he is a dick. I don't like President Trump as a person. Now, granted, I have never actually sat down and talked with the man very much, but I remember watching him on, what was that reality show? The Apprentice, yes. And I thought, God, he's such a dick. But he is a brilliant business person, and I've thought for a very long time that this is how this country needs to be ran, like a business and not like a free-for-all. So,
or babysitter.
Exactly.
They want I feel like the government wants somebody that they can hire to be a babysitter, not actually give any parental guidance.
Well, and, you know, when he took office, unemployment was at an all-time high. The deficit was getting bigger by massive amounts. The GDP, or the gross domestic product, or, you know, our output of goods, was at an all-time low because most of our major outputting companies had left. You know, they weren't being treated right by the previous administration or the previous 6 administrations, and they started outsourcing all their jobs. When President Trump got elected, that switched. We saw jobs coming back to the country. Our GDP is at the highest it's ever been. Unemployment is at an all-time low. There's nothing the guy is doing for the country that I don't like. As a person, do I care what he fucks? No. He could have fucked every porn star on the planet. Don't give a shit. Just like I didn't give a shit back when good old Clinton got his dick sucked in the Oval Office. Hey, good for you, man. That's cool. You know, did you post that on social media? Of course not. But
did social media even exist back then?
Not to the extent that it is now. But I didn't care. I was like, well, if Hillary doesn't give a shit, why should I? You know, and she's married to the guy. I don't care who sucks his dick in the office. So, you know, I don't care what they do in their personal life. I don't. As a business person, Trump is shrewd. He knows how to broker billion-dollar deals, and he does it, or multi-million dollars at least, and he does it. And, you know, what did he do? The very first thing he did was get North Korea to the table for negotiations. Now look, North and South Korea are reunifying, or getting ready to.
That's actually impressive.
It's very impressive. So, you know, I don't see any fault in what the guy is doing or what he has done. I am very impressed with him. I am glad he's my president. However, if you look at that face and listen to the way he talks, he sounds like a moron.
And
but
a small crybaby.
I didn't want him to be president because of the way he spoke. I didn't want him to be president for the way he enunciated. I wanted him to be president way back when because I knew he was a business person. I knew he was young enough, and I knew he would get the job done, and I also knew he was a patriot. And if you look through his life in the past, there is nothing about this man that you can convince me he's a racist or a homophobe or any of that. Just because he doesn't agree with homosexuality does not make him a homophobe. It makes him a typical white Christian. But the guy is definitely not a racist. Throughout the 80s and 90s, he was all over in boxing and everything else, hanging out with all these big black guys. I'm going to use, what's his name? Mike Tyson, his manager, the guy with the fucked up hair. I can't think of his name either at the moment, but, you know, he gave more money than whoever it was. He gave a ton of money to the, what is it called? It's the Black, United Negro College Fund. That's it. He gave a ton of money to them. He's working for free, literally, which is what I think every politician should do. They should not get a salary any bigger than the median of their constituents. He's every time he gets, quote, paid every year, he gives that money to different charities. So he's actually lost money being a politician. Whereas you see Nancy Pelosi, right? She's supposed to be making like $179,000 a year. Somehow she's worth like $42 million. How does that even work?
By channeling it into a savings account and not spending it for a penny.
You show me a savings account that's going to take $172,000. That's what you're given to live on. So that doesn't include like her house payment, her car payments, or any bills that she has to pay. Okay. And the chick has like 3 or 4 $24 million plus mansions. Yet her constituents are what? In tent housing. It's ridiculous. So I just wanted to say that I like President Trump as a president. Not really keen on listening to him talk, but then I'm not a politician. I don't have to listen to him talk. He is not a politician. He is a businessman. And that's the difference.
I also think it's funny how everyone looking back on his tax records.
Who cares?
Well,
if the IRS didn't nick him for his taxes in the past, I don't give a fuck. The IRS bugs me every year. I have to pay in, so what? If your taxes are part of why we hired you, where the fuck is Obama's birth certificate? Oh God. Did I say that out loud?
Oops.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that out loud. Yes, I did. It wasn't never proven that he is actually a fucking citizen of the United States, let alone had the right to become president. But again, you can't talk about that because the radical left, and yes, I'm saying the radical left as if they're a fucking terrorist group because I believe they are. The radical left doesn't like that initiative. It doesn't like that narrative. It doesn't like the truth. How many times, or for how many years has Trump been under investigation? Ever since before he took the fucking White House. That's ridiculous. Anyway, let's move on because we are halfway through. All right, here's fear. Hey, we've kind of touched on this a little bit and how they use it to control you. Fear, we touched on this in last episode. Fear is a very powerful motivator, right? It can motivate you to run. It can motivate you to fight, that whole fight or flight sense of stuff.
Yes, indeed.
So fear is a very, very powerful emotion. Way back when, we're going back to the Revolution, the American Revolution, right? A group of Americans really didn't like British rule. We're too far away. They're taxing too much crap. We have no representation. But we're afraid because, it's Britain. They have this huge military, this huge navy. How are we going to combat it?
How indeed.
If the propaganda machine then would have been what it is now, we probably would still be under British rule. Or more to the point, we'd probably be under German rule by now. But propaganda is a great fear mechanism. What is propaganda? Propaganda is telling people what they want to hear in a way that makes them think how you want them to think it.
Oh, like all the major news outlets?
Exactly. So you use this propaganda. Everything sucks. Life is terrible. And the only thing that you can do to change it is to join us. Well, sounds good to me. I'll join. Why? Because I don't want to be in fear. There's this whole cycle of anxiety, right? There's a trigger. Leads to panic, leads to worry, leads to a change or a minor change or major change in your belief system. It leads to control and back to panic and everything else. So I have this bill. Okay, that's my trigger. Fuck, I don't have money to pay it. There's my panic. Week goes by. How am I going to pay this bill? That's my worry. I'm worthless. I'm a piece of shit. I'm poor. I'm white. I'm trash. Poor white trash. That's my new belief system. And I'm out. It's out of control. It's over. It's out of that control. That's kind of the cycle of fear. The powers that be, I won't name them because most of you already know who they are. The powers that be use things in the media, like, and we mentioned this last episode too. When was the last time that you actually watched the news and went away with, wow, that's cool. I like living. Probably never. It's one of those things where they put so much fear mongering and fear and fear and fear and fear, into the news that people start to not want to leave home. I'm one of them. I don't like going out because I don't like people. You get to the point where you worry or panic so much about being out in the world that you begin to isolate yourself. That becomes your new belief system, right? I'm isolated. I don't want to be around people, even though I might have this undeniable need to be around people. I don't want to be. Why? Because there's so much bullshit in our news. And now I'm out of control with it. I don't leave the house unless I absolutely have to. I don't go out on dates. I don't go to the movies, except for extreme rarity. Like I might go see Endgame again in the theater. But that's beside the point. My point is I don't do these things. And it gets worse and worse and worse. So before I was even diagnosed with anxiety, I thought I was having breathing problems. They did a lung, what's it called? A lung, where they measure how much air you can take in. I can't think of what it's called. Mine went completely blank. Anyway, they did one of those tests on me, come back and said, well, there's nothing wrong with your lungs because even though you smoke, you still have the lung capacity of about an Olympic swimmer. So I'm like, okay. So then the doctors want to check my heart. I get on a treadmill for 15 minutes. I about die. They say, well, there's nothing wrong with your heart. I'm like, well, fuck. Okay. So I'm going to go to Walmart and I'm going to get some food. So I'm at Walmart. I'm down one of their big aisles, and a little old lady and her husband come down one side. And this lady with, I think, 2 or 3 kids anyway, comes down the other. And I lose my shit. Full-blown panic attack right in Walmart. Up until that point, I did not think anything about anxiety. I didn't think I had it. I didn't, I barely knew what it was except for from a clinical standpoint. And it dawned on me, Jesus Christ, I'm having a fucking panic attack. I go to my doctor the next day. I say, hey, apparently I have anxiety because I just had a full-blown panic attack in an aisle at Walmart. I'm sitting there. I curl up into a ball, crying like a baby. The old lady comes by and she's like, oh, honey, are you okay? To which all I can say is, yes, I'm fine. And what am I looking at? I'm looking at fucking tacos. So where did my anxiety come from? It came from fear. It wasn't that I was afraid of the old lady or the lady and her kids. It was like everything seemed to close in on me at that one specific time. So I start looking at my life and I go back and I go back and I go back. And I'm like, you know what? This shit has been building since I was about 15. I'm afraid of doing bad in school. That I had a lot of control of because I did great in school. I'm afraid that my friends won't like me. Well, that was an up and down kind of thing because it was an off and on kind of thing with most of them. I had a few very, very close friends who we had the same kind of thought processes. So, yeah. I just got a text message that threw me off. So, that's the thing, is fear becomes a cycle. Oh my God, I got the hiccups.
As a kid, I think I had more anxiety than I do now. I definitely have mixed emotions while I'm driving, just because people these days can't seem to drive, but that's another story in and of itself. But in school, I had not at this point embraced who I am or who I was, however you want to look at that. And because I was different, I got bullied so bad every day. Didn't matter. And I liked to go to school. I liked learning. I had fun learning. I didn't like going to school though. Why? Because of the freaking bullies day in, day out. Was that something I could avoid? Not really, unfortunately. But now as an adult, I've embraced my weirdness. I've embraced my psychoticness.
Psychoticness? That makes me really cheerful that you're sitting behind me.
No,
but yeah, okay, so that's part of it, right? I mean, I knew who, what, where I was back since I've been like 9 or so ish. So that wasn't one of my problems, but I see that in a lot of today's youth, is that they don't know who or what they are. Everybody is so about the me, and they're so separated from everything and everyone, and you're constantly bombarded with things. Don't tell people your name. Don't tell people your phone number. Don't tell people where you live. Don't tell, blah, blah, blah.
Don't
blah,
talk
blah.
to strangers.
Exactly. And I mean, some of that, yes, is for safety, but really, if somebody has my phone number, I don't care. I can change my phone number. I can turn off my phone if I want to. I don't have to worry about that. So that hasn't ever bugged me. But the bullying thing, now I can completely relate to that, because before I was, what grade was that? 6th? Yeah, in 6th grade, I moved to a whole different town, different school, all that kind of stuff. Didn't have any friends or anything, and everybody used to pick on me because I was little. I was also usually about 2 years younger than everybody that I was in the grade I was with, because, hey, I was smarter than them. And so, yeah, I got picked on. I was smaller than everybody, blah, blah, blah. Finally, after several months, I started martial arts training, and I had to beat the shit out of a couple people, and then people stopped bugging me. But so I get that. But the thing is that we're going back to fear here and how they use it to control you. They being that the powers that be they. They constantly bombard us with things that are bad for us, that we shouldn't be doing, that are illegal even. They make things, they legislate things that they have no right to legislate. They get this in our minds that we are all bad people, or there are so many bad people out in the world that we isolate ourselves from them. When we're forced into a situation where we have to be around them, it's like, oh my God. And it just keeps going and going. With the news, they tell us so much shit is wrong with the world. There's all these terrorist attacks. There's people getting shot at a music venue. So what does that do? That makes parents are like, no, you can't go to that. People are getting shot out there. You got family and friends who are, all about the me and not so much the you. I mean, it's just a constant thing that feeds in on itself. And, you can look at fear as this: face everything and rise. Meet it head on. Oh, this is one thing too that I learned about this lovely planet and the financial system, is that if you are faced with something, a bill, a note, a car note, whatever it might be. It is better for you to call them and work something out with them than to ignore it, because it won't go away. Are you kidding? The way money is? Hell no. It's not going to go away. But if people think that you are capable of being rational and working something out, even if it's a little bit less or a little bit at a time, they are more willing to work with you because they want their money in the end. If you're looking at a house note, for example, they get interest on that. So when they work it out with you, they make more money, because even if they're only accepting half payments for like 6 months, they get more money because your principal on that balance is higher, and they're going to make more money off interest. So you have to look at fear as face everything and rise, FEAR. Because when you can rise above that fear and realize the world and the situation for what it is, which is temporary and in most cases stupid, then you can rise above it.
And I think it's funny, going back to your intro into this, talking about how we broke away from Britain because we were fearful, not liking the British government, they're taxing us too much, they're too controlling. It kind of brought to mind exactly where we're at now in America. They're too controlling, they're taxing the bloody hell out of us. It's basically a cycle on repeat, and yet they've got us in this grip where the American people, at least the 98% that are not in that massive high income class, are too bloody scared to rise up and say, stop it. I mean,
well, and think about that, right? Because if they do, what do they become? They become terrorists. And that's how it's going to be broadcast around on social media. That's how the media is going to present it, is that they are terrorists. So, and again, it's a great way to look at, World War II Germany, or pre-World War II Germany, 1920s, 30s Germany, right? Just out of World War I. They're all fucked up. They have no money. They barely have enough food. And then this guy comes around, and he's a great talker. And he says everything they want to hear. Sounds a lot like Obama, but he says everything they want to hear in a way that they can understand it. The entire country rises up and becomes Nazi Germany. What is one of the things that the government would have to do in order to fully control and pacify the people? Get rid of their firearms, which is one of the fundamental rights that we as Americans have. And for that very reason, the founding fathers weren't idiots. They were pretty damn smart for being back in the 1700s, right? Because they said that the right to bear arms is a pivotal right, and it is not to be infringed. And that is how it's written in the Constitution. It doesn't say, and there's arguments, oh, but they didn't know about these here semi-automatic and automatic weapons with 3,000 ammos and stuff like that, did they? Well, no, they probably didn't think about that, but it doesn't matter. It is our right to have these things, to keep the government in check. There's several, pardon me, there's several people, and I'm talking like sheriffs, I'm talking about, state patrolmen, et cetera, that have flat out said, no, we will not be taking anybody's guns away, period.
It's actually kind of impressive.
Look at cities like Chicago, Detroit, who have very strict gun laws, yet they also have the very highest gun murder rates. Why? Because law-abiding citizens won't own them. Only the bad guys do. And the bad guys are going to be bad guys with or without guns. And if they know that the person they're about to rob is a law-abiding citizen, guess what? I'm at an advantage because they ain't got no guns. I do. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to pull this gun on this motherfucker. He's going to give me his money or I'm going to shoot it and take it. And that's the thought process. I don't know why these fucking politicians think that's going to change. If you tell somebody they can't have it and they want it, I mean, what? We've had a 47 some odd year war on drugs. Yet, wait a minute, opioid epidemic.
Went up.
Coke, all these things have gotten out of control. And just to throw a point back in on this, I think it's funny that El Chapo, the big Mexican drug guy, once he said that he sent a lot of money to the Clintons and the Democratic Party, all of his stuff disappeared from the media. Don't know why that is, but it's pretty funny.
Imagine that.
All right. We're going to move on because, wow, we only have like 8 minutes left, and I think we're going to run over. Possibly, but the law of one. So I kind of wanted to hit this just because we've mentioned it in a couple of the previous episodes as to what, some quotes from it, but I don't think people really understand what is the law of one. Okay. So I'm just going to touch on this very briefly. The law of one is a material Okay. Let me see if I can read. The law of one is material from an exact transcript of 26 sections of an experiment designed to communicate with an extraterrestrial intelligence that took place in 1962 and then was refined and redone in 1981. And we here are going to be discussing the information from session 1, January 15th, 1981 and forward. Who is this Ra character? It's a good question. Ra is the collective consciousness of many higher density beings, and we'll get into what density means later, who have watched the human species since the beginning, and only now that we have reached out to them looking for knowledge and truth can the information they possess be given down to us.
That seems almost like something that I heard watching, I think it was Ancient Aliens, about the Akashic Records that's only going to give you information
if you look for it,
and it's got to be really specific.
Yep.
So.
Okay, now why should you care about the law of one? Quite simply, the information that we're going to be discussing will pertain to everyone that's listening in many different ways. Okay. You should care if you're open-minded and looking for answers as many of the questions that we'll talk about here will contain a lot of profound information that is a help to you, to help you open yourself to further growth as a person and assist you in ascension. And we'll get into what these words mean, like ascension. What the hell is that? You think of ascension, I think of Stargate SG-1. Not quite the same thing. You're not going to turn into a glowing octopus, but so anyway, I did want to hit that really quick. And we're going to rush through this stuff too. Human expansion into the cosmos. Where are we going to go after Earth? Well, if we go anywhere, so far in our solar system, we found liquid water on Titan, a moon of Saturn, right? Yeah. And Europa. Okay. As well as Earth, obviously. So those would be two of the first places that we'd look. However, humans are not the most graceful creatures on the planet, literally, or in the cosmos. So, there's always to be expected some sort of problems like that. But I did want to talk briefly about this because this was one of the greatest lines ever. Human beings are a disease from the Matrix. Look it up. And if you think about, and I think he actually says a virus too, if I'm not mistaken.
He says it's a virus and it spreads and spreads and infects and spreads.
And that's exactly what humans do. What do? We infest an area and then we grow and grow and expand and grow and grow and expand and grow and grow and expand. and leaving nothing left. And why is that a problem? Well, things like how we almost hunted the water buffalo to extinction, animals encroaching into cities. I believe this is actually Estes Park, which is not too far from here, where the elk come through and stuff like that. Now, why is that a problem? Well, some people are idiots and then get too close or do something stupid, and the animals, who are animals, attack them, hurt them, and then what do? We end up killing the animal. It's like, really? Kill the person too, because they deserve it more.
Well, this is a spot that irritates me too, and is kind of close to my heart. It's like, as you mentioned, we expand, we develop, and then we expand some more and develop some more, and we're continually taking away the habitats that were originally belonged to these majestic native creatures of the forests. And then you want to get your pennies in a freaking wad when one of them happens to wander back into its old home, and all of a sudden, oh my God, stay away from it. It might have rabies.
Yeah. Well, and, again, we've seen that with the near extinction of many species, like, the white wolf, for example, or the gray wolves. They were hunted because they would encroach on farmland or ranch land, and they were hunted to near extinction. Thankfully, it's one of the few that have come back from near extinction with major vengeance, but most of them are on reserves and stuff like that. Even though they're large, like huge reserves, they're on reserves. Like I believe a lot of the wolves are now in Yellowstone, and we're taken there to be safe. But again, people continue to expand into areas that used to be grasslands or forest lands. And then what happens to, like in this picture, the deer, they end up coming down. People are like, oh, that's so beautiful, until one accidentally steps on your baby that you have in your arm or something stupid like that. The other thing is once we get out into the cosmos, what kind of alien or intelligences will we run into? Back in the day, even Star Trek was like, oh, look, we ran into the Klingons and the Romulans and the Ferengi and all these people that didn't really like us much. So we'll kind of see where that goes. We might expand a lot more on this in a future episode. I'm trying to wrap this up fairly quickly. But our goal as Team Taboo here and this web series, as well as the show on 106.9 The Arrow, is to bring awareness about events. It's to answer questions that you guys have. And, we have multiple ways for you to get a hold of us to ask questions so that we could go through them. We want to aid in enlightenment in yourself, your family, your friends, however you want to look at that. And we definitely want to bring truth to the news because it's so skewed anymore. It's really
nauseating.
Yeah. And then also, and most importantly, we want to help our listeners in any way that we can. So if you have any topics that you'd like to discuss, you have anything at all that you want us to talk about, or even join in the conversation, you can always do that by joining us on any of our live streams. Keep in mind too that we always repeat this on Friday at 7 p.m. on 106.9 The Arrow as well. So yeah, reach out to us. Let us know what you want to talk about. We are more than happy to help you out. Other than that, that's really all I have for this time. And we are right at the hour mark. Nice.
Nicely done.
Yeah, I was concerned there. So again, we will do this again on Monday. 7 p.m. every Monday live, and then a repeat occurrence on 106.9 The Arrow at 7 p.m. on Friday. So by all means, let us know in the comments or an email to show@taboo.media, or hit us up on Skype at The Arrow Radio on Skype, or, any of the comments. Of course, we listen, read, reply, and talk about all of them. So until then, I do want to thank everybody for listening once again. as we are going to be out of here in just a moment.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you all for listening, watching, commenting, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon.